Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Joy, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, this week we were rocked by the news of U.S. sanctions, that is, the U.S. Treasury Department sanction on three key government officials, charging them for public corruption, or if you were like me, born before the 80s, rampant corruption. So we're going to be discussing the U.S. Treasury Department's sanction on three key government of Liberia officials and President Weah's response. With me to discuss this, we have Mr. Mohammed Sharif, who is our governance and planning consultant. Mr. Sharif, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. It's always an honor. I'm looking forward to a robust discussion.
Thank you. We also have our chief political analyst and also the proponent of the CDC one round victory. People call him CDC Pape, Mr. Wilmot Wetty Cooney, who's joining us from Philadelphia. Mr. Cooney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And last and definitely not the least, joining us for the first time is Mr. Ekena Wesley, who is also joining us from Philadelphia. Mr. Wesley is the author of the Petros diary that he's been writing since 2006. He's going to tell a little bit about that. He's been a technical writer for the Civil Aviation Authority of Liberia and also former communication director under President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Mr. Ekena Wesley is also an award-winning journalist. Mr. Wesley, welcome to the show.
Dennis, I want to say thank you very much indeed. And it's a pleasure to make a median appearance here on Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much. This is your first appearance on Focus on Liberia. We want to present to you our bottle of water to say welcome, welcome, and welcome.
And like we say in Ghana, Akwaba.
Akwaba. In Nimba County, we say Kanu Yola. Welcome. I also want to welcome Mr. Mohammed Sharif. He is FOL political analyst, also joining us from Philadelphia. I should also mention Mr. Sharif is the proud product of Waplo Institute, all the way from Kilipo, Kanwiken. Mr. Sharif, welcome to the show.
Dennis, it's great to be here as always. Thank you.
We also want to welcome FOL public policy analyst and presenter of FOL History or the Liberian History Channel, Mrs. Call Family. Call, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
It's so good to be back.
Thank you, Call. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is what we will call the full house. The topic is so important that we've gathered the best political and policy minds. I call them the best panelists or the best panel in Liberian diaspora internet television. Carl and Mohammed, you were not here. We've been joined for the first time by Mr. Ekena Wesley, who is also joining us from Philadelphia. All right.
Welcome, Mr. Wesley.
Thank you very much indeed.
During the week, we heard the news, and this news, and for those who are joining us for the first time or who may not know, let's go through a little summary of it. We saw that three key government officials of Mr. Weah, that is the government of Liberia, were sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department for rampant corruption. They are Mr. Nathaniel Mangill, the Minister of State for Presidential Affairs and the Chief Staff to President George Weah. Mangill has bribed, according to the report, business owners received bribes from potential investors and accepted kickbacks for steering contracts to companies in which he has an interest. He has manipulated public procurement process in order to award multi-million-dollar contracts to companies in which he has ownership. The next person is the SG Solicitor General Sema Serena Cephas, He's the current Solicitor General and Chief Prosecutor of Liberia. He has developed, according to the report, close relationship with suspects of criminal investigations and has received bribes from individuals in exchange for having their cases dropped. CFOS has worked behind the scenes to establish arrangements with subjects of money laundering investigations to cease investigation in order to personally benefit financially. Last but not the least, Bill Tuawe, who is also known as Bakuba Jr., he's the current managing director of the National Port Authority, NPA. Tuawe, according to the report, orchestrated the diversion of 1.5 million United States dollars in vessel storage fee funds from the NPA into a private account. Tuawe secretly formed private company to which, through his position at the NPA, he later unilaterally awarded a contract for loading and unloading cargo at the port of Buchanan. Tuawe is being designated for being a foreign person who is current official who is responsible for the complicit in or has directly or indirectly engaged in corruption, including the misappropriation of state assets, the expropriation of private assets for personal gain. Oh, that's a lot. Mr. Cooney, let me start with you. You heard this kind of report. Your first reaction?
Well, as I indicated in the chat room, even before the show today, the report is serious. The report is shocking. My initial reaction is that public service should not be a place where public officials will enrich themselves, because that diversion of resources rob the people of their march towards development. My other reaction to it is that I wish our institutions were developed to the point where we would be at the center of directing this thing instead of being a foreign country. That is the only regret that I have. It's not a justification of the act or the allegations that are contained in the disclosure, but the fact that up to this point, we as a nation, we have not developed our institutions to the point where information like that cannot be provided by us, or even if it is provided by us, we are unable to take action on the basis of such information. So that's my initial reaction to the report.
Thank you. And let me take a step back and look at this came from the U.S. Treasury Department. So the news said the U.S. Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control designated Liberian government officials Nathaniel Serenius and Bill for their involvement in ongoing public corruption. And how they call this Executive Order 13813 builds upon and implements the Global Magnitsky Human Rights Accountability Act and targets perpetrators of serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world. Corruption has long undermined Liberia's democracy and its economy, robbing the Liberian people of funds for public services, empowering illicit actors, degrading the business environment, and damaging the rule of law and effective government in the country. Corruption also contributes to diminished confidence in government and public perception of Look, where I have some internet trouble. Can you hear me?
We hearing you now.
Yeah, you're back on now.
Mr. Ahmed, let's talk about this Magnitsky.
Dennis, I think your internet is still...
America, a foreign country, have anything to do with what we do in our country?
Well, let me assume that I understood the question. We couldn't hear part of it there, but then it's look, this report is not shocking. We've been talking about of public corruption in our country. We've been talking about misrule and bad governance, really a missed opportunity on the part of our government officials, our current government, the administration of President George Weah. This is not about, you know, who you know, whether they're your friends or whatever. We've been really loud about the suffering of our people and the behavior of officials who are currently at the helm of powers and authority in our country. So I just wanted to lead with that. So the global Magnitsky Act, it's a separate legal authority than what OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, under the authority of the Secretary of the Treasury. But they do similar things. They reinforce each other, and they're instruments that the United States government uses from time to time. Magnitsky one is newer, 2016, named after a Russian Sergei Magnitsky, who was tortured in Russian prisons. And so that's a human rights, it's a human rights instrument that is applicable globally, the GLOMAC. So both of them now are used to really, by the U.S. government as an instrument to exercise the long arm of the law, of the U.S. law, on foreign officials, foreign individuals, terrorist regimes, rogue regimes. Look, unfortunately, sadly, our government officials are now on an infamous list of countries like North Korea, countries like Russia, countries like countries that are very infamous for bad things. That's the list that we find our officials find themselves. The U.S. ambassador in the announcement stated that even emphasized that this is not a sanction against Liberia; it's a sanction against these individuals. It's not meant to punish, a sort of a deterrence. Look, let's face it, this is a sanction in a way against our government because these individuals are some of the highest officials in our government, and they've chosen this path for themselves. They've chosen a path to plunder the country, to enrich themselves. As a result, the U.S. government has to come. It's a shame, frankly. It's a shame that a foreign government, if we are a sovereign country, another sovereign country has to be the one to come and say, listen, your people, you are corrupt. You're robbing your people. You're not governing. You're not, you're bad people, essentially. And then we're going to sanction you. We'll institute visa restriction. We will seize your assets. Any entity, individuals who are associated with you. The OFAC has this 50% rule. They talk about ownership of 50% or more in any share in company or any organization, and then they have enforcement action as well. So the bottom line is this is damaging. This is damaging on so many fronts. I hope we have opportunities to explore some of these other fronts.
Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Wesley. He's the author of the Petros Diary. Mr. Wesley, what is this Petros Diary? And you've been writing about these things. How is this one any different or similar to what you've been covering and been talking about in most of your writing?
Well, not essentially different, as it were. It is just a combination of all of what we've been trying to do over the last 5 years since our compatriots who have promised the best for our country have promised to do and delivered, if you may. It will interest you to know that my brother and friend, Mr. Coleman, is suggesting that he had hoped our institutions of state, particularly the graft fighting institution, would have taken the bull by the horn. They are in country. They have been playing their relevant role, but the existing political will has been non-existent. The LACC, as you may recall, calling into question the Minister of Agriculture, the chair of the National Elections Commission, and you name them. And no action was taken. We have a situation where a journalist has spoken to the president, bringing to his attention the issue of the Minister of Agriculture as far as nepotism is concerned. And he thanked the journalist for doing a great job and for bringing it to his attention. But I think before that, the LACC acted consistent with the act creating that agency of government. Sadly, the political way has not been there. The political way has not been demonstrated. And so here we are because Monday, August 15, 2022, the bells that have been ringing, that sanctions will come, even though some of our friends didn't take it serious, finally landed with the slapping of sanctions against three confidants of the president, the Solicitor General on the one hand, who's the government chief prosecutor, the president chief of staff, and then the managing director of the gateway to our economy, Bill Chaweh. So here what we have here is the reinforcement essentially of all that we've been doing on this platform, all that other Liberian advocates, all of that brain pressure group have been doing on various platforms across the globe. And so we are not surprised. We knew the day of the jackal would come, and certainly it has landed. And so what we're looking forward to is additional leads, because by the end of the day, like our friends have told us, once the corruption permeates, of course, the hospital in my good friend village, Mohammed Sharif, will not have access to Medicare. The schools will be ill-equipped. Our students will not have the opportunity to go to school. So fighting corruption from outside, yes, it's just a reinforcement of all that we've been doing. And the imperative is for us to recognize that with our friends from across the Atlantic reaching out to us to assist, we too must demonstrate the political will. Because what has happened in our
Mr. Wesley, before you continue, I mean, as you said, this is what we've been saying. I have said it, you've said it. Why nobody listen until someone from the United States have to speak before we listen? Why is that?
We've always been like that. We have always been like that. And you know what we say? They say whenever Washington sneezes, somebody, the small West African nation is going to catch cold. And that is the reality that has dawned us. Interestingly, the president was doing his pre-election campaigning in District 17 when the American ambassador was holding a press conference with a select group of media people. The news dawned on them. The president became distraught. His Minister of Finance was pretending to be having a private conversation with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Magay was being left entirely by himself. It had dawned on them. Now that Washington has spoken, now that they know what it means to be corrupt, to go to Banga and tell our people, say, yes, other people looted yesterday and they took the money abroad. There's absolutely nothing wrong with we using the money, building mansions and giving the money to here on the ground.
Thank you.
Here we are. We wouldn't be talking anything about, yes, it is good to loot public resources, deny hospitals, schools, and other facilities an opportunity. They will come to the realization that it is a menace, it is unacceptable, and it is something that we should not be able to encourage.
Thank you. Carl, the United States Treasury Department has spoken, and 3 officials of our government are indicted. What do you make of this news?
Indicted?
No, not indicted, sanctioned.
Yes. So 3 individuals have been sanctioned. And in the great scheme of things, it really doesn't mean anything for the average Liberian citizen, because this is really a tool a diplomatic tool. They're not putting any economic sanctions against the country. They're not recovering assets to benefit the country. Our country itself isn't acting in any way that's going to do, present any type of restitution. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of noise and hoopla because we think that the responsibility to govern Liberia falls on the authorities that other citizens have elected in their country. And that's strange. I think also, in spite of what the US government is saying, that the true reason that these 3 individuals are being sanctioned is not because they stole from the Liberian people, but because they stole US resources. Serena Cephas, for example, the only case that I know of where Serena Cephas had openly accepted or been accused of accepting a bribe to drop a case was because of Ellen Kwame Corcoran openly testifying in U.S. federal court that she sent some of the PPP money of the $4 million that she was convicted of stealing from the U.S. government. She transferred some of that money to Liberia. So Serena Cephas now becomes an accessory to an American crime. He has now in his possession stolen funds. And he is the Solicitor General of Liberia. And he received, and they can track this very easily through wire transfer, PPP money from Ellen Kwame Corcoran, who calls herself Hunter Vanderpelt now. That's why he's on that list. It's not because he's the only 3 people who stole. But this guy, even though it was a relatively small amount of money in the greater scheme of things, as far as comparing what he received to what his other 2 colleagues who are sanctioned received, he received $75,000. His boys, they stole millions of dollars, and Serena Cephas is being sanctioned for $75,000, of PPP money that he took from Hunter Vanderpelt. So, it's sweet for him. But I want us to understand, too, that there's a lot of USAID Millennium Challenge Corporation money that was misappropriated and can be directly traced. For example, USAID started a school feeding program in Liberia where USAID provided some type of farina, some type of dry cereal to school kids. And once that happened, you see packaged school food program with McGill and the president's face on it. I don't know if you guys remember that. Well, that's not something that they procured. That was USAID donations to Liberia. And they packaged it and put their faces on it. You guys are quick. So so this, they're calling this their project. This is USAID money. This is petty stuff. I mean, they took a whole container from the port. I still believe they did it. I don't care how people want to sing and talk around it. They didn't get sanctioned for that. They got sanctioned for stealing food from children. I mean, we have evidence that the Japanese government in 2018 donated, I don't remember how many, tons of rice to Liberia. They repackaged it and sold it as pro-poor rice. Nobody was sanctioned by Japan. But the theft, it's just so annoying, right? So it's annoying. And I think whoever made the decision to put these sanctions is because it's annoying what they're doing. Why would you take donated resources that are meant to feed children and put your face on it? Why would you do something like that? Why would you tell someone that you're going to send me some of that PPP, that U.S. federal government money that they're providing to their citizens because of COVID? Send it to me and I will sacrifice however many cows. That's annoying. That if you're even in a diplomatic role, you're going to say, you know what? These people are getting under our skin so much. Let's just sanction them. I mean, just the absurdity of it. So I personally just think that they're being sanctioned not only because they're stealing, because they're not the only ones. They're not the only ones, and there's people stealing all over Africa, all over the Caribbean, all over Latin America and Asia. They're not being personally sanctioned. This situation is what it is because they're doing little petty roguish things, and it's easily proven. They're not even trying to be stealth in their attempts to defraud the public. It's brazen, it's blatant, it's crude, it's embarrassing, and it's annoying. And that's why they're sanctioned. You're a minister of state for presidential affairs. Your wife works for the UN. You should be a middle-class family. And you're not living a middle-class life. Your wife is buying $50,000 worth of accessories and wearing it on an afternoon outing on a Saturday in Monrovia. That's annoying. In the situation with all that poverty,
Corey, if I'm following you, you're saying they have done all these despicable and scandalous things, but they've not been sanctioned, and they are only being sanctioned because what they stole came from the U.S. Is that the point you're making?
That's what I'm saying. They stole U.S. resources, and they did it in the most annoying way. And it's not even something that anybody would even be able to overlook. Any reasonable person would overlook. You can't take food from babies that was donated by someone, put your face on it. Yeah. I mean, how despicable is
that? Thank you. So just a flashback. This is Mangue's mother, Mausoleum. Compare that to a school in Riverside. Mr. Sharif.
Yes.
They say this news was greeted with, people are happy. Somebody say, whether you die by lightning or you die in the water is all good. So what you make of this, especially when you look at with everything that have been done, with the stealing, the level of stealing, we heard, Serena Cephas, he's on tape talking about virgin heads with a convict, a felon. Nothing is done. We saw LACC report coming and saying, well, Bill 2 hour, this other one, they put in Buchanan, all these other stealing, passport scandal, all you name it. Still, we hear nothing. The legislature at one point designated former Deputy Minister Eugene Fagon as non-government material. Nothing is done. But when the United States said, hey, the rhetoric on this Congo country is dangerous, boom, we're listening to the U.S. all the time to do something. What do you make of this? We would say, well, it's all good because as long as they are punished. But what's your general feel about this thing that it is only when the U.S. sneezes, that's the only time we're going to do something about our criminals?
Dennis, it's an excellent question. I wanted to get into a little bit of background to kind of further what Ahmed started there with the Magnitsky Act. But I want to go directly to your question because it's a very important question. This is really a shame. This should be a shame for all Liberian men and women today who are alive that our president, the president of the Republic of Liberia, has capitulated to the United States of America, not to me and you, not to Call, not to Ahmed, not to Wilma Coney sometimes, and those who have sounded the alarm, really. I mean, this platform, my goodness, this platform has been busy with assessment, analysis of the issues. This platform, for as long as I have been on this platform, it has been busy critiquing some of the social ills in Liberia, but these guys are not listening. Why are they not listening? Why is so? If this is a good leadership. I'm not even talking about a very good leadership because that bar is too high for them. I'm just saying a good leadership. Good leaders should listen. They should be listening. They should be watching to see what the Liberian people are saying out there. They should pin their ears to the ground to sort of sample the views in the marketplace, the views in the streets of Monrovia, the streets of Calipo, the streets of Zwedru, wherever,
Right.
Ganta, wherever. What is going on? What are the people saying? So that is incorporated in decision making, so that there are some changes that the government can make to be able to meet those expectations that are laid out during elections. This did not happen. This has not happened for 4 years. For 4 years, George Weah has been this government with the president at the helm of administration has been very, very corrupt. And the president of the republic is the leader of the corrupt gang. But unfortunately, they're not listening to us. They're not listening to the Liberian people. All of a sudden, the United States ambassador makes an announcement on Monday. The very next day, which was on Tuesday, the 16th of August, George Weah goes ahead and suspends those three guys. And that to me, it's a real shame that our president has to capitulate in this manner, and he's not doing this or listening to the Liberian people, but the United States ambassador, because the United States ambassador said it. And after the announcement, the ambassador said, well, the president knows what to do, which was a direct message to George Weah to do something. And George Weah did do something. And that to me is very troubling. So for that reason alone, George Weah cannot continue to be president of the Republic of Liberia. This is our president, and the manner in which he has just I'm from a Catholic school. He genuflected, right? I think that's the right word. He knelt down to the feet of the United States ambassador, metaphorically speaking, to do something like this that has brought shame, or that should bring shame to all of us. I'm ashamed right now of my Liberianness. And I think all Liberians should be ashamed that this is the leader that we elected, and this is the way the leader is conducting himself. You should not be acting because the United States ambassador asks you to do something. You should do it because it's the right thing to do. So this is a shame. Dennis, there's no other way I can describe this. It's a shame.
Big shame. So Ahmed, what are the implications? First of all, what does this mean? Someone asked me, okay, they are sanctioned the government officials. Is it financial sanction, visa restriction, and all those kind of things? My question to you is, what does it mean? And does it really, or what they've been, the punishment, does it really commensurate the crimes that they've committed? I was talking to someone, I said, well, I mean, these guys, you did this, corruption. And when I showed the school of in Riverside, someone said, put that back on the screen. So this is what corruption has done to our country. I mean, if you look at the Zogo crisis, the way the interior has been impoverished, and there's nothing there. Okay, is that what they get for doing this? Does the punishment say don't come to America? What does it do? So tell me more about what does this mean? What are the implications?
Right. As if, yeah.
You asking me or call?
No, I'm sorry. He's asking you. Okay. I was just saying it's a great question.
So, Dennis, we started by saying that the implications are all kinds of level. Of course, if you're thinking about, okay, so what does it mean in terms of the enforcement of the sanction itself? It obviously will affect them and affect people who want to do business with them. For instance, banking institutions and so on. But now remember, our president just suspended these three officials. It means that they're still officials of the government. They're just suspended temporarily. What does that really mean legally? I mean, if somewhat how the government does business with them, our government is implicated, You know, so by extension, there's impact there on the Liberian people, aside from just the shame. If you want to look at the corruption implications by itself, you know, I mean, I always agree with my sister Cole on a lot of these issues, but I want to say it's a little more than just because they stole U.S. money. I agree that OFAC and the Magnitsky, these are all United States foreign policy tools, right? In the interest, foreign policy interest, national security interest, economic interest of the United States. Anything that jeopardizes any of that. I mean, terrorists have these sanctions, rogue nations have these sanctions, rogue individuals around the world have, drug traffickers have these sanctions. These sanctions. So our officials now are placed on that list. So yeah, it's a foreign policy tool, but you have to remember every U.S. embassy. I think the number 3 most important official aside from the ambassador and the deputy chief of mission is the political and economic affairs officer. That office is the office that collects information, and transmits to Washington in cables. The office that knows who's stealing what, who's undermining the peace, who's doing well, who's not doing what in the country. To think that our officials do not even understand the implications of that interactions with those United States officials, it's just really mind-boggling that they think that they can operate without it's sort of under the radar. Of course, the warring operative, they will say brazen. A lot of the things that they've been accused of are things that you and all of us have been speaking against. So corruption, we all know. I don't have to come here to try to educate you about the negative consequences of corruption. It robs the country, Dennis. See our country. Listen, we're suffering like the ordinary people, basic services that people don't have. People are dying of curable diseases because our hospitals don't have enough medication. They're not equipped. Now, if one person can appropriate several $1 million to themselves, and you multiply that individual by 100-fold, you can imagine, you can just extrapolate and do the math and know the damage that this is doing. Corruption itself, endemic corruption, rampant corruption as it is doing to the country, right? But these sanctions are sending a message also to officials, future government, future administration, future officials who would think that they can themselves engage in public corruption and pillar the country. So when you ask about implications, I think that it has political implications, it has economic implications, it has diplomatic implications, and a lot of legal implications as well.
And how does that help us as Liberians?
It helps us in a way. Listen, the United States government has invested a lot of money. I mean, that's arguable. Some people say maybe it's not enough. In the stability Liberia has enjoyed since President Sirleaf came to office since 2003, 2005, and up to now. Now, the argument is corruption undermines that peace. It creates fragility of the country. The country is already a fragile state, right? We're not really out of the woods here with the conflict that has brought us this to our knees. And so you have officials who are engaging in public corruptions, who are not governing by extension, because their focus is for your personal aggrandizement, appropriate state and public funds, public resources, public assets to your own personal benefits, your own personal gain, of course, and nobody has to tell you that they're not paying attention to the vexing problems of the day. And so, there's risks there. It's really possible that we can relapse into conflict. And these foreign countries, they don't want to be the ones coming back again trying to quell that conflict down and then trying to begin to prop us up with some resources. Liberian officials don't finish a sentence without saying our foreign partners, they're donors, our foreign partners. But why? It's because these Liberians are hub as an international donor and NGO hub for a reason. And so they're watching some of that, and you have to engage in these kind of sanctions so that you send signal to those who are undermining the peace and who are not governing, frankly.
Thank you. Mr. Cooney, let's talk about the implications. And some of the implications, according to what I'm reading here, it doesn't only end with those that have been sanctioned, right? It says, in addition, persons that engage in certain transactions with the individuals and entities designated today may themselves be exposed to sanctions or subject to an enforcement action. Furthermore, unless an exception applies, any foreign financial institution that knowingly facilitate a significant transaction for any of the individuals or entities designated today could be subject to U.S. sanction. In other words, I mean, we've seen someone like Miguel, give up a lot of money, either to EULA, even though EULA is a promise, so I shouldn't say give it to EULA, but all around the country. So what are those implications? And someone may ask, will anything really come from in this?
Well, I think the implication there, if you look at the information that is provided, the information is telling us that the individual sanction, especially in the case of Minister McGee, has several business transactions, has acquired certain businesses. So basically what they're telling us is that if there is any business out there that Mr. McGee has, this percentage of share in that business is also subject to that sanction. I am familiar with some of the processes used in the acquisition of the information. I'm not talking about the investigation. So by my experience, I'm of the view that there is a credible basis to the report, and the Treasury may know exactly businesses and individuals that may be connected. They will not put it out there as a matter of speculation. They will put it out there because already they know the entities, businesses that may be involved. So that would be the impact on those businesses or the individuals that will have this significant contact with the individual sanction, to the extent that the sanction will also may have an indirect impact on them. But having said that also, earlier I said that I would have hope that our institutions would be the one. Actually, let me amend that. I wish our political leadership had been the one that would take this action, because over time, Dennis, historically, our political leadership has not developed the will to actually take action on corruption. We justify it through different reasons. Some people say it's because we are too closely connected because of familiar relationship. And
when you say political leadership, what you mean? The president?
The presidency, the executive leadership. Some justify it, they say because we are so connected as close family members, the society, everybody know one another. And then in certain situations, partisanship, friendship, which may be suspected in this case, also come to apply, to the point where the leadership is kind of has not been being able to take action. Right. We've said that we hope that our democracy will reach a point where people will be held accountable not just by what they do, but what they say. So, for example, if you look at the utterances, we're talking about the famous Banga utterances. That should be enough to claim somebody's attention. Where a minister of government, is held, justifying the illegal wealth. Let me make that short. That those words should be chilling, to anybody. Like I said, look, you see, I wear many hats. I am a social worker. I'm supposed to protect children. So if somebody make those kind of remarks about children, it will raise a red flag for me. So these are the things. Now we also talk about, why do we have to wait for America? Or my brother said, we talk about capitulation. My brother, in big power politics, Liberia has no choice. When the Americans speak, even countries that are more solid, they don't really have a choice when Americans speak. Be has it made for me, I welcome that. Even though it's coming from the Americans, I welcome that. Because again, I kind of see it in this way. The way public officials behave in Liberia, they don't give themselves checkpoints. They don't create their own limits. This announcement of the sanction, for me, it's like that trooper that parked their car on the road. You know, you see the state trooper when they park their car, when you're driving on the highway, and you see that light blinking, you will apply your brakes because there is a trooper there, there is a police trooper there. So to me, it has some deterrent effect. It may not solve all of our corruption problem, but it will create this deterrent effect. I want to believe there are people in the government right now that are considering their actions. They are, their minds have gone into thinking. And so to the extent that it creates that kind of deterrence, I think it is good for the country, but we need to do more. Like I always say here, we have to expand our effort to fight corruption. Asset justification. When you in public service, justify your asset. It shouldn't just be declaration of assets. It should be asset justification, asset declaration, investigation of those assets when they are declared. All of that will help in our current situation.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley, let me put this picture. President Weah bowed to U.S. Treasury Department sneeze, that's how someone call it, and suspend his key advisors. But where does that leave him? If you look at those people that have been sanctioned, very close to the president, where does that leave the president? What are some of the implications? Today I was hearing him on his Monserrado County tour, and for the first time, I always heard this from people around him, but I heard from himself today talking that he has done more. In just 4 years, he has done more than people that have been there for 17 years, for 12 years. You know, normally here there has a joke that people are trying to prop him up, but I heard him say that today. With people being so close to him sanctioned, and he himself has kind of, I want to say, taken the bait, for the lack of a better word, by suspending them. Where does that leave him? And what does that say about him?
Oh, Dennis, I have followed Focus on Liberia variously. To hear Mr. Coleman speak the way he's doing clearly suggests that the shivers coming out of the sanctions is impacting his candor. But that said, you refer to the three people and their proximity to President Weah. Let me put it allegorically. We all carry two kidneys. The sanction came for the heart of the presidency and took it away. President Weah is psychologically paralyzed. He's politically drought. What you see or hear him do in the pre-campaigning mood is to put up a brave face. The sanction is impacting them, and like we say in Liberia, they are all carrying running stomach politically. What does it tell us? The chief of staff in the office of the president has never been as powerful any time in the history of our country. President Weah devolved power to his chief of staff, in effect making him a de facto president. So if the de facto president gets sanctioned, it tells you that there is something fundamentally wrong at the presidency. If anybody doesn't get it, and we require a rocket scientist to come and interpret that, then that person will be found wanting. We have a situation where all we've said over the last 4 years, all we continue to say on this platform and several other platforms, including our friends in the media on the ground, reporting corruption, unearthing scandals after scandals, and the lack of political will failed to act in such a way and manner that it can save government the meager resources so that the hospital you just show all of us in Riverside will not be shown any longer, that our people in that part of the country will have a befitting facility to go and learn under conditions that are at least appealing. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. We've had a leadership that has devoted more time in entertainment, as you find with the Booker issue, than focusing on the crucial issues that made the headlines during the 2017 campaign leading up to the elections. We were promised the building of bridges where there are no rivers, and you name it. Now the time came to deliver. People are still consumed by campaign mood, and that's precisely what has been obtaining since January 2018 up to this date. And to give an impression that in the last 17 or more years, you've done more, it's just a fallacy. We don't live on Mars. We are Liberians, and we are part of our interconnectivity. Whether we are home or we are abroad, we are connected to the country in such a way that technology has made it so simple. We can see, we can feel. It means we are forced to pay civil servants on time. And we have relatives in Liberia. They cannot go hungry and perish. They will have to get to the phone. Use that cultural connection with us so that we can be able to chip in. Is that what has been happening in the last 17 years? At least even if the people he's referring to didn't do their best, civil servants and other people will show up getting notification on their phones to go to the banks, even if it was $10, to take it and start turning Liberians into beggars. The greatest achievement of Mr. Weah has been to turn us into beggars. It is unfortunate. It is happy. It is a good thing that the sanctions has essentially reinforced, like we said, all that we've been saying. And for Mr. Weah, who has not been able to suspend or dissolve his cabinet at any point in time, to muster a pseudo courage to suspend people who have committed felony, rather than dismissing them immediately, because the sanction in its narrative does not present anything called allegations, but nothing but the obtainable version of the truth based on facts, detail, painstakingly gathered, and remains undisputed.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley called that pseudo courage. For some, the president was quick on his feet to respond swiftly by suspending the named officials. Let's talk about the president's response. In this response, he also said they are suspended pending investigation. He didn't tell us that he was turning them over to the Justice Ministry for investigation. I'm not sure who's going to do the investigation, Mr. Kunime.
The Solicitor General said being,
Right. So what do you make of the president's response, and do you see that as genuine or something that he had full knowledge about, or was it an
so the president has done a couple of things lately that I find to be amusing. The first thing is you had CDC COP go march to the U.S. Embassy. You had a order protest. Everybody goes to the Americans, right? So the Sioux people who never used to go to the U.S. Embassy to protest, now that's the new thing. The United States Embassy becomes our new government, And so the Sioux people go to the embassy, and then the CDC thugs go to the embassy to say Weah's doing a good job. On their way to go bow to the new ACS colonial governor. They go there, they get into a fight, and the CDC people beat the devil out of the smallest kid in the group. They picked on the runt out of all the two people. They pick on the smallest beginning they could find, and they beat the living daylights out of him, almost killed him. I don't even know how he's doing. Not to make light of the violence, but then Weah did something amusing. What does Weah do? He disavows this group. Hey, they're not part of us. And the same Weah, the same president, he's the spider. These guys are the spider web. He's the spider. He is the spider. He's weaving the web. So the U.S. government, the Treasury Department, puts sanctions against, financial sanctions against the web that he weaved around him to catch things to feed to hit him. So the spider sets the web for the benefit of the spider. And the U.S. government basically chaklas the spider web. And Weah does another amusing thing. He suspends his own spider web. It is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And if you were real Don Dada, you would say, I'm not suspending anybody. What you would do about it? They will continue to work. The same thing you told us, and the same thing you told the children June 7th and all the subsequent protests to bring back my container protest, the same thing you told the people who empowered you, who elected you, who believed in you, which is, I do what I want. These are my boys. Y'all go sit down somewhere, right? He, instead of telling the U.S. government that, because if you were real Don Dada, that's what you were going to say. That's what a lot of these other governments where government officials are sanctioned, they're like, so what? You know how many people are sanctioned in China and India? They don't care. They just continue. They don't bow to the U.S. Nothing comes out of it. But again, the ACS colonial governor speaks, and the semi-liberated captives jump through whatever hoops they tell them to jump through. And it's pathetic. I think it was Mohammed or someone who described this as pathetic. And our citizens have lost the dignity of sovereignty. Our fellow citizens have lost the dignity and self-respect that comes with sovereignty. You hear people talking about, we should be colonized again. We have believed now in this lie about our own inferiority. We believe it, right? So people say, the Africans can't govern themselves. They can't do this. We buy into the inferiority complex. And we have become everything that they say that we are. Instead of us standing up for ourselves and saying, you know what, we're going to end corruption. We have a legislature. We're going to pressure our own government mechanisms to do the right thing. We have a system in place. We're not at war. We're not being occupied by some foreign characters. The money that, I'm not going to name political parties right now, but the money that certain people are spending lobbying the U.S. government against their own government. If they lobby their own government against the corruption in the Weah administration, it would be much more effective. But they don't have the respect for their own country and their own systems to even try, because they're so used to bowing to the ACS colonial masters. Do you know what that amount of cash violence that has been applied toward lobbying the United States would do in our own House and Senate in Liberia? Do you know what that would do to the Weah administration? If you even just look at the opposition people that are in power, and you say, you know what, we just spent $100,000 per representative in the United States to get them to put pressure to sanction Weah's government. What if we did that right in Liberia? We can go bribe another country, lobbying, in my mind, is a form of bribery, legal bribery, right? We can go do that in a foreign country's, to a foreign country's elected official. We don't do it to our own. We don't ask anything of our own. We don't push domestic policies. We don't take the responsibility that citizens are supposed to take to move the government and their country forward. No one can do that for us. No one, and the pathetic thing is, Mr. ACS colonial governor said it to us. Nobody is going to end corruption in Liberia but Liberians. Yet and still, we sit here after the man explicitly told us what we should already know, and we're still reverting to them and saying, oh, they have saved us. Look at what they've done for us. They've done nothing but expose us for the cowards that we are as a country. If we don't prosecute our criminals legitimately, I'm not talking about these witch hunts that we do when we go after political opponents and make up lies on them that we've seen happen over and over again. I'm talking about legitimately prosecute our criminals in our own courts like other human beings. Then maybe we don't deserve sovereignty. You know, we're human beings. We also are human beings. We should also exercise and push our right to self-determination. We should raise our own standards. Raise standards for our elected officials. Raise standards for our public officials. We are not animals. We are human beings.
Cole, you coming with this animal thing again?
I'm coming with the animal thing again. We're not cows and goats and chickens that need to be taken care of by someone else. We are just as human as other humans on this planet, and we need to start acting like it. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. And Mohammed, to this reaction, the president's reaction, not just the president, but the overall celebration from Liberians that finally Daddy has spoken and somebody is going to listen. And true to the words, right? The president listened. We also saw a reaction from Councillor Tiawon Gonglo, you know, kind of welcoming this and adding his own words. And then 2 days later, we saw another one from Mr. Cummins, you know, like, yes, this has been done. So why it is good that U.S. is doing this for us. And Carl, you made a very good point, right? Something has even as simple as our political leaders, our opposition people sending their statements to our local media. You know, what's wrong with Mr. Cummins, Mr. Councillor Gonglo, Mr. Boaka, all these sending their press releases to focus on other media outlets, but we prefer to take the money to the U.S. and lobby. And now, because the U.S. has spoken, it is like there's a new day for us.
And everybody, yeah.
Yeah, and so because the U.S. has spoken, so it's a new day for us. You know, one thing I've always and I'll continue to maintain is that this incompetence, you know, is not just with the president, right? Last time I described the president as incompetent, and then there was a CDC supporter, you know, Ibrahim Kone, living somewhere in New Jersey, who said he's tired of me using incompetence. Okay, well, listen, how about inept? How about deficient? Okay, so how about those words for me to use those tonight? Because I have a lot of vocabularies, a lot of words at my disposal. So just because I said he's inefficient, incompetent, does that mean he's the only one that is incompetent and does not understand history, right? So you have some members of the opposition that are also buying into this whole idea that, you know, someone else has to do it for us. Do I appreciate the fact that, you know, we can form a coalition with partners who will do some of this? Yes, I do. But at the end of the day, it is Liberians themselves who can save Liberia. Unfortunately, we have leaders who have not listened to their own people. George Weah is Exhibit A. He's not listening to the Liberian people. He's not listening to the Liberian people. He never has and never will. And so some members of the opposition understand that. And some members of the opposition also think that it has to be like Mr. Cummins, you know, who also think that, I believe that it has to be some foreign powers that have to do all of this for us. what does all that tell you? All that demonstrate that the alternatives that we have is not, it's not a real good alternative out there that we have. It's just one a tidbit better than the other. So the competition in 2023 is, sometimes, we're holding our noses and, putting our ballot in the boxes and say, oh, God help us. This is what Liberians are going into. So there are no alternatives that you can look at and say that, they're going to clean up this mess. This is a total mess that we're in. We have a president, and Dennis, tonight, if there's anything I took away from this whole sanction debacle and George Weah, fake suspension, because he's not serious. This is not anything. This is a slap on the wrist. He's not serious about corruption. The only thing that George Weah cares about right now is to come to the United States. Somehow, the Liberian government officials, and this just didn't begin with George Weah, have the proclivity to just love coming to the United States. They love to be alive with the United States. George Weah wants to be seen in the White House. And the number of pictures, there might be 2,000, 3,000 to 4,000, 5,000 pictures that they may take that day when George Weah enters the White House for the first time. Let me tell you, because he can't wait to get to the White House. And so we are in for real trouble. It's not just George Weah, it's all these opposition leaders who must be allied to the United States. Yes, Mr. Coney, I do believe that, what George Weah is doing it's not right. He's capitulating. I'm going to repeat that, and it shouldn't be that way. You said historically Liberian leaders have always bowed to the United States. Yes, that is the case. Tubman's speeches were clear about the American embassy in Monrovia. So yes, that is the case. There was a time that a Liberian leader was independent. They killed him. That was William R. Tolbert, who came to the United States and told them exactly what the aspiration of the African people for liberation and all of these different things. Then they killed him. But to say that George Weah is not bowing to the United States, you cannot contradict that. That's what he's doing. He's not the only one that has done that, but it has to change. It has to change. Someone has to change that. Just because historically that has been the case does not mean that we can't change. It has to change.
Thank you, Mr. Coney. And Mr. Coney is going to leave in like 15 minutes, so I'll go to him now. Mr. Coney, you are a law enforcement officer. You do some of this investigation. What do you think the investigation looked like that really exposed what Mr. They call him the pseudo prime minister, Miguel, Mr. Tuawe, and Councillor Cephas are doing? And what do you think, if you look down, where you think this is going? Where is this going to lead?
Well, if we go by the president's pronouncement, the president announced an investigation. And
no, Mr. Coney, did he announce an investigation?
Oh, you said they are suspended pending investigation, so it's an announcement that there will be an investigation.
But by whom? Do you know?
Well, there are, even though the Solicitor General is part of the sanction, is on the sanction list, but there are other investigative bodies in Liberia.
No, what I mean, did not say to be investigated by the justice system or something, anything. So I don't want you to say he announced investigation. He did not.
Well, I mean, the presumption is that there will be an investigation. So okay. if it is to be a government investigation, there are bodies in the country that can do the Ministry of Justice itself, minus the Solicitor General, can do an investigation if they want to do that. You have the National Security Agency that also has the infrastructure to do investigation. Those are two other entities. You still got the anti-corruption agency that is still there that can do an investigation if that's what the government wants, if that's what the president is talking about. There could be other investigation beyond those agencies that have named. I don't know what kind of investigation the president is referring to. But I think if you look at that, with the president announcing an investigation, he has raised some level of expectation that people want to see an investigation. Then the question becomes, what do we get from that investigation? So if such an investigation were to take place, I would believe that there will be sharing of information. There may be other areas that the Treasury may have obtained their information that may not be available to local law enforcement agencies. And generally, there has always been situations where local law enforcement do share information with partners. When at the National Security Agency, we did share information with the United Nations, with ECOMOG, common areas of cooperation. So I would expect that maybe such a thing would take place also if an investigation were to be launched. And then what would be the goal of that investigation? Will it be for prosecution? Those are questions that we don't have an answer to right now at this point. If the investigation, I don't see a practical path to McGee and the sanction people coming back to government. I don't see that path. So what would be the goal of this investigation? Is it for prosecution? Is it for punishment? That is yet to be seen. But I just wanted to make a point that, just to contribute to a point that Carl made, that sometimes we look externally for our own salvation instead of looking internally. Certain issues, we've discussed them here, I tend to relax the partisan hat. Because when you talk about corruption, it's not a partisan issue. All Liberians are impacted when it comes to the ramification of corruption. When it comes to violence, I normally don't want to put partisanship on this issue. When it comes to the security of the state, those are not partisan issues. But just to maybe add to what Paul said, I didn't mention it earlier because I didn't want it to be viewed as maybe making an excuse. The legislature, I've always said it on this show, we have these bodies, we have a democracy, and for me, the hope that I have, things may not be perfect, but my hope is that over time, maybe our institutions will be perfect. We have a legislature. You see all the opposition leaders now, they run into the microphone to give statements. But these people, they have their party representatives in the national legislature. When you make reference to it, everybody in Joe, we are party. How can everybody fit in the president party in the legislature? Everybody in the judiciary fit in the president party. Then my people, what kind of country we have? If even judges that have lifetime appointment can put themselves in the president party, if even legislatures, some of them with decades of tenure, can put themselves in the president party, then our country is in trouble. Then it appears that the salvation is not coming from anywhere. Because the kind of check and balances we have is for one branch to monitor the other if that other branch is not performing or if it is doing things in excess of these kind of situations. So my hope, whenever I speak for Liberia, I'm hoping that our democracy will evolve. We'll reach a point where we have this legislature that will hold other branches of government accountable, where the judiciary will play their role, where the executive will play their role, and there will be the check and balances that will reinforce our system so that we don't keep running to the international partners. Because there is an international partner fatigue in our country now. If any little project is international partner. To fight corruption is international partner. To conduct election is international partner. Everything in our country is international partner. So for me, that would be my hope. I'm really, really, really sorry I have to leave here tonight, right, because I have a serious church commitment, which I discussed with the moderator earlier. So maybe let me just close with my tabata. My tabata is the fact that whenever we hear these things about our country coming from the outside, there is that massive jubilation on the part of all of us, whether the government, if the international community praise the government, we all jubilate. If the international community condemn the government, the opposition jubilate. The idea that we find our source of joy, not in the things that we do ourselves as a country, but that our joy and our satisfaction to outsiders, I think is the greatest political tabata that we all in. So
thank you, Mr. Coney.
Can you talk about Duo 2023?
It was nice sharing the platform with you for the first time. And Carl, I will catch your tabata when I follow on YouTube later on.
Can you talk about Duo 2023? What kind of fake organization?
You just
One round,
established.
one round blinking. You
No,
want
no, let Mr. Kunin leave. So Ahmed and Akina, I know we cover a lot. I don't want to ask you questions. I just want to hear your. We talk a lot. So if you have anything to add on what those questions that were asked that you want to contribute, please go ahead.
Well, by all measures, this is a serious situation, and I am really sad that the institutions that Mr. Koenig is now talking about, we didn't want to, he's gone, so it's not here. We didn't want to make it about, but Mr. Koenig is the ones that established a one round 2023 group, and this is the government that's really doing well, and others don't see it. It's not like Liberia has not had institutions, or that Liberia does not have institutions. Liberia is a serious country. Historically, Liberia has been there at the founding of every major international organization in the world. There has been a Liberian voice. But that we have not been able to make the progress that we should have made, that we ought to have made up to this point, because of our own self-destructive tendencies, our own, just this mental battles that we have, and sometimes I tend to blanket, but it's really the reality. It's become society to the extent that we're captured by our own behavior and the way we think, right? You are a government, and you see that you're running a country that's come out of long years of conflict, has all kinds of drag on it. And all you can do is really focus on yourself, build mansions, wear expensive luxury accessories and clothes and travel and just abash yourself in that sort of affluence that has no place. If you earn your own income, you have holdings all over the region, all over the world. You have investment, you make money. Good for you. Hats off to you. Bring that investment home. Demonstrate to young people that when you work hard, you enjoy the dividends of that hard work, of that ingenuity, of that creativity, whatever it is.
So Mr. Talib, where do you think this is going?
Well, I think that I said earlier that the Americans are sending a message. Whether we like it or not, they're sending all kinds of messages. 2023 is coming. These guys have been very brazen. They've taken the Liberian people for a ride. Like there's, corruption is a runaway thing. It's with impunity. You have a Solicitor General, right, who has been sanctioned for public corruption. Now, this is someone who is the government's chief prosecutor, who should have been the one who is collecting evidence to try to go after people who have been alleged of stolen public resources. They are unsanctioned. Of course, it's the Ministry of Justice, the whole institution, right? They have other prosecutors there. I'm not suggesting no one else can do the job. He is also the managing director of the Gateway to the Economy, whose company that was named, at least that was referenced in this sanction report here. The implicated staff or commissioners at the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission as associate people who created these shell companies allegedly, right? And that are now in the report. So you can't go to the LACC, right? There'll be a conflict of interest there. There are people there who themselves were associates of Mr. Traore, who was named in the sanction, designated by this sanction. So the implications is just, the point is, you have individuals in the government that other people have said that the global Magnitsky will come after for human rights violations, and there'll also be other political corruption sanction that will hit certain individuals based on their behavior, based on their lifestyle and what they're demonstrating. So this is not the end. The elections are coming. They want the Liberian people to know people for what they are, who they are. And they also want other political actors to act appropriately, both in government and outside of government. And for those who will be at the helm of power after the elections in 2014, in 2024. So I think the final thing I would say on this is, if you are for the government, you defend them. But I'm telling you, there's an unease in this government right now, in this administration under President Weah. All these officials who know themselves, who know that they behave very similarly, that these people who have been sanctioned are no different in terms of how they conducted themselves. They're not sleeping easy. We have to call it what it is.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley, you were laughing when Carl was giving the analogy about the spider web. So I know if you want to say anything else concerning those things that we've talked about, but there has been reaction, right? I think Mr. McGill in the newspaper said he challenged anybody to prove that he's corrupt. And he specifically mentioned the name of Senator Abraham Darius DeLong. Say, if you can prove it, I'm going to resign. We also saw newspaper reports that the FIU in Liberia has been mandated to freeze their assets. And then I saw another report, it's not been independently verified, that Nathaniel McGill had 4.2 million in Ghana that has been frozen as well. I don't know the validity of these reports, but what do you make of this reaction, and anything else that you want to say, because we've talked so long?
The reason I was sort of chuckling while Cole was speaking is because of our ultra radical posture in the case of the ACS vis-a-vis the Governor General of the ACS. Whether we like it or not, there's no way we can detach ourselves from our American friends. You remember April 6th, we have bundled up dead bodies before the American embassy. Of course, we could have taken it to the executive mansion, but the executive mansion was virtually not existent. Even the folks that should have been in the mansion, Mr. Taylor and the rest of their colleagues,
Oh my God.
were hiding in Congo Town, where they had their militias, fighting all over the place. But that said, what this has done for us is to bring our government to its heels. Because Focus on Africa and a dozen other platforms have said what you are doing to your country is dangerous, is unwholesome, is unacceptable, but our leaders simply refuse to listen. McGill did not get approved. He did not resign. He's been suspended, which I describe as a pseudo action on the part of the president. By this time, our executive president should be convening a cabinet meeting, urging her cabinet people. So we just woke up Monday morning, and from the wind, 3 of my confidants were sanctioned. Those of you who have skeletons in your closet, please do the honorable thing and start to resign. And don't cause us an embarrassment, because you're not only embarrassing yourselves, you're embarrassing our country, you're embarrassing the future of our people, because the loot that you'll be able to acquire is coming out, not from within, but from without. And it is bad that strangers should come and remind us that we are thieves, we are looters, we are faithless, we are heartless, irresponsible, and we treat our people not as human beings, but as trash. That's precisely what we expect our executive president to be doing, rather than holding pre-campaign meetings here and there to inspire a group of gullible people that, yes, he succeeded in doing very unrealistic thing in the last 4 years, and that they should give me another opportunity to continue the public looting as openly as he and his gang have been able to do.
This is just pathetic.
Let's read a few comments here.
Dennis, can I respond?
Yeah, sure.
So, this is the kind of situation, this is why we're in the situation we're in. Because the best and the brightest among us make statements like, there's no way we can divorce ourselves from our American friends. We're not married to the United States. We are a country, and the United States is a country. All countries relate to one another based on their interests and their survival and for the benefit of their citizens, not for the benefit of foreign citizens. The relationship Liberia has with the United States is one of extraction, and we are not the extractor. That's not a friendship. Friendship implies reciprocity. We are in the United States because we have been extracted through circumstances. That is a human capital drain that Liberia cannot afford. Besides human capital drain, there's human resource drain. That is not friendship. That is a predatory relationship. And pretending that that's not what it is because it makes you feel good or because you're afraid to tell the truth, because the truth would mean that we would need to act differently and make different decisions about how we conduct ourselves, doesn't change the fact that we are in a position where we are being bullied and manipulated and controlled. And it isn't even hidden. It's well documented. As far back as 1932, Herbert Hoover, the president at that time, openly, because they were trying to get themselves out of the depression that they were in. And they were looking around, realizing European countries were extracting wealth from Africa. And Hoover looked at Liberia as being an opportunity for the United States to get back on its feet as a place where they could go and extract resources, human capital, human capital for little of nothing. And how he wanted to do so was to destroy Liberia's sovereignty. This is documented U.S. history. How was he going to destroy Liberian sovereignty? By making sure that he put in a puppet, in his word, dictator. Not the word puppet, but he used the word dictator. And Du Bois, W.B. Du Bois wrote about this. I mean, in his own policy documents, Hoover wrote about this. And this was a plan to undermine our sovereignty, not for the benefit of Liberian people, but for the benefit of the United States. U.S. foreign policy towards Liberia has not been reciprocal. You're talking about human bodies being poured in front of the Capitol. Let me tell you about our friends. And so I speak as someone who was born and raised in this country. Born and raised in this country, I understand how the United States sees Liberia better than probably any of you on this panel, because I was raised to think like an American. I went to school with people who were being positioned to be leaders in the future. One blessing I've had is that I went to some very good institutions. Unfortunately, as an African child in those schools, you get to see the rawness of how people see us as human beings. So there was only two ways I could go. I could be a complete coon, excuse my language, or I could stand up for myself and realize that, hey, if I can deuce these people in school, I'm just as human as they are. I'm no different from any child born in Liberia with a belly full of worms. It was a matter of opportunity. And so when you make statements like our friends, when those bodies were piled in front of the embassy, do you know what Bill Clinton was saying to Liberians, including myself, who was a child activist at the time? Do you know what he was saying? That not one U.S. life, not one drop of U.S. blood is going to be wasted. The word was wasted on Liberia, because he had this horrible incident in Somalia with the Black Hawk helicopter pilots being killed. So therefore, all of you darkies in Africa are not worth the trouble or the embarrassment.
Thank you.
And I'm not finished, Dennis. I want to say one last thing.
Yes, please. Wait a second.
Please. This is what I grew up seeing from this vantage point. So when I hear people who are in Liberia going through the war and suffering, and we know that when our family members were being killed, these same people that you call your friends didn't want to be bothered. We have to learn to do things for ourselves. We have to learn to respect ourselves and have expectations of ourselves. We're not children. We do not have a parent country. We must take care of our own mess.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley, you want to respond, or we move to the next?
Rather than turning into a seesaw, I will keep my reservation.
All right. Let's read a few comments here and we'll go to our phone lines. This one, Dali War will say, my favorite journalist, Dennis Jha. Moses Nyepan say, let's adjudicate before sending them to Bela Yala. Mohammed Sharif says the criminal cartel has been exposed. Flomo Livingstone, this CDC government are hypocrites. They were protesting for 12 years against corruption, and they are doing even worse than the previous administration. Michael Dennis said, don't eat sweet and forget about toothache. Darling again say, we will petition the United States government to deport Kony, aka CDC Pape. He's more corrupt than the three amigos. I don't know where your proof coming from. And there are more and more comments here. Sam Wallow, did Sherry really want President Weah to do nothing? I think I remember President Salih quickly changing her tune on not requesting that Nigeria turn over Charles Taylor after the United States told her she needed to make that request. So quickly, our time is fast spent, so let's go to our phone lines. Quincy Kilby said Mr. Weah will be brought down just like Charles Taylor. Sam, Kony, you just spoke from your heart. Thank you. All right, let me, I see one caller here, and that's Elvis. Elvis, you have 1 minute. Go ahead, please. Hello, caller. Your name and where are you calling from? We have another comment here. Is Sanctions? Yeah, go ahead, Elvis. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you for the show tonight. Good panel. I don't want to laugh on Mr. Bartholomew Gale a little bit. I still spending the mayor for spending the money in Liberia. The reason LA people were stealing the money and sending it overseas because they don't want to like rent people to see them genuinely being corrupt in front of them. That's why they were more sophisticated to hide the money. You know, unsophisticated men try to be real, you always get caught. So like biggest problem. But again, this is a get out free card for president. We have to fire all of those poorly, performing government officials. Like look at Samuel Toy. We failed in the video challenge on fiscal policy. What fiscal policy can that man implement in our country? I'm not an economist, but just looking at it, it's terrible. We can fire him also. He just need to do a clean sweep. Fire a lot of those guys and get them out of the way. And hide behind the excuse that, the American government watching us. We gotta put you people there. Mm-hmm. You know? But what Ms. Carl said, I must agree with her. I think she's spot on. But again, the reality on the ground is that we're a poor country. We're very much poor and we're dependent upon the United States. So we totally dependent. We still come out to get the US in the bank for money. So everything you're saying logically it sounds good, but in reality, we depend on it so much. But thank you for taking my call, Mr. Jha. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Houston Brooks say, I'm sick and tired of hearing Liberians refer to the United States as our friends. America is not a friend of Liberia. It is a relationship of control over Liberia while feeding Liberia crumbs. Due Hinen say, America just gave Ukraine $42 billion. George Walker agreeing with Colsey, while unfortunately she's speaking the truth. Master Pace Setter, Ikena Wesley, the president also has a dirty and congested closet, so he has absolutely no courage and moral to say his ministers must resign if he has such closet. Let's get our last caller here. That's Aliyu Kamara. Aliyu, quickly, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dennis, how you guys doing? I said hi to Cole over there for me. I hope she's not listening to me. I hope she can't hear what I'm saying. Listen, Hey, everything she's saying is a historical fact. Very logical, very reasonable. That she has not made anything up. They're facts. But as it relates to the situation on the grounds in Liberia, I cannot really connect the dot as to what is the basis of her argument. Apparently, she is looking at the book history of Liberia and not comparing it to the pragmatic history of Liberia. Listen, wait a minute. Where is he coming from? Hold up. No, let me tell you something. You see, the truth of the matter is we have to appreciate America for what happened these few days. Because you're telling us that we are a serving state. Yeah, a big war, very big war. What made us serving? We are able to control our border. We can actually provide security for our border. You have a police and not even get motorboat. You say you are a serving state. You are a serving state, you know that Nathaniel Maggie was walking around with a bag of money in hand. What country that serving and the minister can be working with a bunch of money, goes to get them 50 million. A pastor, you get them 50 million, the president clap for you. And you call that a serving state? Did you not know that the LACC indicted government officials and the president came on local radio station and defended the indictees? They say dry does seal. But what do you be eating until the dog get dry? You want all to sit down and wait until Judge Weah prosecute corrupt officials? Remember when the whole Noka thing, LA Jordan Solution, between 50 and 80 million was taken out of Noka? What LA say? I take responsibility. When Judge Weah came, what Judge Weah said to LA? He said he gave her 80%. He ever ordered LA? He said that the boss in South Africa enjoying his money like Brentford money. Oh, what do you want to do? We must sit down and wait until what thing happen now? Did the whole country die? No, somebody has got to do it.
Thank you, Alan.
And that's what happened. Thank you so much.
Let me get Mr. Paul Harrison or Dulce Paul, one of you. Please go ahead, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Yeah, so, Ms. Cole, with all due respect, everything you said is right. Like you're preaching to the choir. We all know, we are looking forward to self-reliance. So, we have this self-reliance sense, Dr. King, Malcolm X. Matter of fact, we go all the way back to Marcus Garvey, self-reliance. But until we get to that self-reliance, we need somebody to step up for us. And we welcome the United States effort, because today, all the lions in the town have become two-flat lions, basically. You know, people are threatening people from Liberia, people in America are threatening them to go back, to do this and to do that. So all the people, they are feckless. All because of the United States. Imagine what happens if the United States withdraw themselves from Liberia. They will become a Liberian. Also will be brutalized even more. So please, the United States will welcome that. We need more of it. Because even protest, people get brutalized to protest. The last protest, when Mr. Kuno in court, babies, women took their babies for the protest, and the police did not care. Babies, the people are running over babies and all. So we are until we can become self-reliant, we need a United States. Everything you're saying is right, but we need a United States. Because until now, we cannot govern ourselves, and it's been proven we cannot govern ourselves.
God.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif, quickly to our callers.
Unfortunately, the callers are pragmatists. They've been realists.
They've been brainwashed.
Well, yeah.
If you say everybody here brainwashed, then of course,
we really
you're not being fair to the rest
exactly.
of us.
I'm talking tough. Take it personal.
We're talking tough, exactly.
No.
Take it personal.
If you follow our right, you will not say that to me. That is why I said it's not a ding dong thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
The way I write is the way I talk.
Okay, good. I don't agree with the mentality. I just don't.
And you're entitled to your opinion, quite frankly.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Yeah,
and I respect you for that.
This is not today's happening. There's a history to this. So I appreciate the history, and I appreciate that the aspirational aspect of it too. That in reality, this is who we should be. We should be equals, right? We're a sovereign state. But you can't read history in isolation of international relations or international politics and politics of world order. This unipolarity that Putin is fighting. Why is Putin fighting unipolarity today? Why is China trying to also be a superpower and to try to exceed the United States? So there's these ideological warfare that are happening around us for a reason, right? Because of these the economic powers of the world are the ones who are ruling everybody else. The so-called global north, global south. Liberia is no exception. Ours is even worse. That we have this historical connection with the United States, which has not always been equal. I mean, the truth being told, we've been exploited. We have been exploited for a long time. However, we've not been able, I've always said, to make the progress that we ought to be making to this point. And that progress will put us in a place where we will be able to just use the tools of international relations, right? Or use diplomacy, information, military, economic. These are what every country uses. So where is our economics? Where is our military tool or power tool of state power, right? We can't even in West Africa shake ourselves off. ECOMOG had to come to help us out. If the United States decided not to come, they didn't come. When they came, we held them again. So that is just the reality of things. The problem I have is if we who are Liberians and our leaders who have been given the privilege to serve our people don't recognize that they have an opportunity to make a difference, a slimmer of a difference in what you're able to make with what you have. That's the sad thing. Is it that because we're all victim of our mentality, of our history, and we're all derelict in our duties to our state, in our duty to our fellow citizens? That is the reality of it. And so you don't blame ordinary Liberians when they say, when you say America, hey, this is why it is. Because the people are powerless. They're helpless. Their own state it seems as if the state has ceased to exist, or and the administration has not been able to really exercise government the way government ought to be. These branches of government, somebody comes after you to exercise institutionalism when they try to punish you, or if you're a political opponent. That's when the judiciary functions well. That's when the legislature, the power of the law, comes after you. But then we relax everything. We become very unethical people, unethical society, where we heal people who are bad people, who are doing bad things, who are stealing our resources, giving us crumbs, and we say, you keep my mind, you keep my power, I'll vote for you. Whether you do this, I'll vote for you. We sink behind our youth, sink behind these people. So that's where we find ourselves. It's like we're drowning in our own saliva. How do we extricate is the question we all have to be trying to figure out, because the practical reality is a reflection of what you're hearing in this course.
Thank you. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll go to our Tabata session. Keep tuned.
Our country, sweet Mandela, our country, that God gave us this country. Tell Liberia, that God gave us this country. We are calling on everyone here to come and pray for this country, Liberia, God gave us this country.
Well, it's God who gave us this country, Liberia, and that's why we are here to talk tough tonight on Tough Talking Thursday concerning our country. At this time, every week, there is some Tabata going on somewhere, and I believe this week there has been some. So we go around the room for our Tabata session. Mr. Wesley joining us for the first time. Tabata is a Southeastern world made complete foolishness, nonsense. So either in government, either anywhere else, we want to talk Tabata right now. Let's start with Mr. Sharif. What's your Tabata of the week?
Yeah, so the CDC, the chairman of the new chairman of the Unity Party had an unfortunate incident. For whatever it is, his house, part of his house was burned, and according to him, he called the fire service. Well, the fire service said, "We don't have any fuel. Our vehicle can't start, so we can't come over there." And this man's house partially got burned, and people's lives were at risk. What kind of country is this? Might as well go back to the Stone Age. I mean, in the midst of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in people's pockets, in corrupt politicians' pockets, you don't have a fire engine.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley, what's your tabata of the week? On mute, please.
Yeah. Too many people, I assume that we will not get to the point where a McGill, Cephas, or Bekube Junior will be home, not at their various offices as it's been in the last 4 years or so. But such has happened. And what it tells you is that this government business, don't take it and put it on your head as though they're wearing other people before you came. The lesson we take home is that public service should not be about the acquisition of wealth. Public service should be one of service and service to your people and country.
Thank you. Call the tabata of the week.
For me, the greatest tabata is the murder of 3 people who did not get tried that were accused of stealing a motorcycle. It was a vigilante, brutal murder, and then people took the photos of their mutilated bodies and posted them all over social media because, we don't have the really even respect for each other and even the mortal remains of our fellow citizens enough that we almost, I don't even see pictures of dead dogs, dead squirrels in the United States. But we put pictures of dead human beings that look like our brothers, our uncles, our sons on the internet. The tabata here is Liberians knowing that these murdered victims did not get a trial, did not get any due process. They were not only executed, but brutally murdered and dismembered. Were under the post applauding the savagery. And this was over a motorcycle. So the lives of 3 African people, 3 African men, young African men, worth less than a motorcycle. For me, I was in shock. I'm still in shock that in this year, 2022, we have been so brainwashed to hate ourselves and look so down on ourselves that a Chinese motorcycle is worth more than the life of three Liberian people. We have to do better. We have to evolve.
Thank you. Ahmed?
Well, my tabata has to be after McGill made that infamous speech in Banga. We all know the language. I'm not gonna go and repeat it. That people say we're corrupt, but we take the money, we can't give it to our people. Yeah. So what's wrong with it, right? And then it comes back to Monrovia. There's an outcry, an outrage, diaspora, internet, everybody in the country, talk radio. Apparently, some kind of heat was somewhere from high places, and so it comes out to say to try to walk it back. Essentially, well, I'm not corrupt. I've never been corrupt, and then he dared people particularly Senator Darius Dillon, that if you have any evidence that I'm corrupt, I challenge you, bring it forth. I've never been corrupt. And then a week later, he's sanctioned. And he can't say anything. There's nothing. I've been waiting for McGill to come back.
That's just awesome.
To say,
you can't make this stuff up.
I'm not corrupt.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't make it up, man. I can pass for stand up. He said you're not, except that it's serious. He said, but so why is he not issuing? He's a powerful a de facto president, de facto prime minister of Liberia. Everybody can be wrong. People say that's how powerful Mr. McGill is. And so, I will issue a statement. If the United States, I am innocent, I'm not a corrupt person, I'm not, and somehow my name ends up on your sanction, on your OFAC list, I'll issue a statement, I'll clarify, I'll challenge the evidence. I want to see the evidence because the United States is a country of rule of law, right? And so you can challenge the government. You can go to court. You can say, I'll sue you. So let's hear McGill. To Liberian people, he said, I'm not corrupt. If I dare you, if you have the evidence, bring it on. And nobody said anything.
Right.
But then the Americans speak and everybody's mute.
Right. This whole idea of show proof when it comes to corruption in Liberia is amusing, right? Because you know very well what you've done. In fact, you make laws
exactly
that are corrupt. Take, for instance, the new LACC law. They're saying, hey, in fact, if you are voting to be able to vote, the chairman should be part of that majority before it passes. I mean, you make such a corrupt law. And then at the end of the day, you're telling us, show proof if I'm corrupt.
Right.
You pass a law, you make stealing legal, in other words. And later on you say show proof because you're going to be able to prove it. You go and put millions of dollars in a budget for an office that have maybe less than 30 persons. And when they say you are corrupt, you say show proof. The proof is right there.
Right.
Why should EPS EPS has more money than the police? And you're telling me to show proof? The proof is right there. My Tabata really is what I mentioned earlier, for President Weah to really on camera tell people that I have built more roads, I have done X, Y, Z in 4 years. Then all along, I really thought other people were saying this thing. To hear from the president's mouth that this has been parroted so much that he himself is repeating it, that to me is the biggest Tabata of the week. Let's go to our callers here and see our viewers. Darling Warwood, my Tabata for tonight is Judge Weah, the ringleader of the cartel, suspending his gang member for bluff. G. Gwen John Smith, my Tabata is all those who were sanctioned were looting for Judge Weah. Evans Morris, my Tabata is Sam P. Jackson publicly claiming President Weah is cousin, when during the days of Joe, Weah tried to get help from Sam P. Jackson, but he denounced Weah then, but now they are cousins. I don't believe that. This man was Sam Wallow. My Tabata continues to be the incredible selective amnesia of those who only see Liberia's problem through the tiny straw that leads them to believe it all started in January 2018. I don't know who are those people, but no, it did.
I know, right?
Can Sam Wallow come on this show?
Right, and it's the other way, right? Because another group will say, well, since 1822, this is the only time that this
1847, they can say 1847.
All right, we have less than 4 minutes to close. Thank you all so much for the time. Let's close 1 minute each on what we really expect to happen within the next week or so, as regards this sanction, the suspension, everything else, and that should be part of your closing. Let me start with call. 1 minute, please.
Come back to me. I didn't. You,
Mr. Sharif.
Well, again, I started by saying, with the United States Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control is a foreign policy tool. The Magnitsky as well is a foreign policy tool that can be implemented through an executive action. And so it's about the protection of the United States government's national security and the economic interests. By implication, if they think that something will undermine their interests overseas, they'll implement this. For Liberians, it's sad that our institutions, our government itself, does not have the courage to seek evidence, to demand evidence, to prosecute these individuals who have been designated, who are now on this infamous list, because you'll be asking people who are probably engaging in similar behavior to prosecute their compatriots. So it's sad all the way around for the ordinary Liberian people.
Thank you. Mr. Sharif.
This is a systemic problem. It's not just George Weah. It's not just Miguel or any of the so-called suspended individuals, right? So you go in the Senate right now, almost all of them are corrupt. And so the judiciary is corrupt. Everybody is corrupt. And so where do you even begin with this? So I think in a lot of ways, Liberia is really, to me now, an African tragedy. An African tragedy in the sense that this country has not been able to sufficiently govern itself. So, we borrow from everybody. For God's sake, we borrow from Israel, we borrow from France, we borrow from Denmark, we borrow from, anywhere, right? We borrow from, the African Development Bank. We borrow from everywhere. So this is a big, big borrowing nation. We borrow from China. Everywhere money is available. Dennis, right now, if you're a billionaire, Liberia will borrow from you. So, Liberia borrows from everywhere. It's a borrowed nation. And to me, that's a tragedy. And not because there are no resources, not because Liberia is not wealthy. Liberia is wealthy. But there's a deficit of leadership. These leaders are so very corrupt and selfish that they're grinding the country down to the ground. They can burn the country down to the ground. They don't care. They don't care, and that is the problem. And then these voters elect these thieves and murderers sometimes. Now these thieves that they're electing, and they're right now they're saying, some of them are saying, a lot of them are saying they don't care.
Yeah.
Where do we start with all of this?
Thank you. And Carl, in your closing, you think this list or this sanction thing going to get to the president too?
I don't think so. And even if it does, I don't think it will matter as much. What I would like to see happen to come out of this is for Liberian citizens to test our own systems. Governments are a reflection of the citizens, not the other way around. We're not occupied by some foreign power. We are the government. In a country when there's a democracy, the people are in charge. I would love to see Liberian citizens improve themselves so they can improve the country. What do I mean by this? Be what you seek in the world. If you want to have a more efficient government, be a more efficient, effective citizen. With the privilege of citizenship comes responsibility. Government doesn't function without the civic responsibility of citizens. You can sue McGill and these other two for what they've done. Citizens, civil society can take this up to the courts. You have your representatives, you have your senators. You can demand that they have a hearing on this matter. All of these people are answerable to the citizens. The US government was right on point by doing these sanctions, but this does absolutely nothing to advance our cause as a country. What we should be doing with this information is we should be seeking justice through our own courts, through our own elected officials, and we should be pressuring them. We should be doing it through constitutional means. We shouldn't wait for someone to come and recruit us for purposes of war, mayhem, or violence, or vandalism, or whatever nonsense happens. We have legal means. Let's try to do things correctly. That is all I'm saying. Let us raise our self-esteem as a country, as a people, and believe that we are capable of solving our own problems. No one, if America wanted to fix Liberia, Liberia would be fixed. If America wanted to solve poverty in Liberia, Liberia would not have poverty. The fact of the matter is that is not their responsibility. That is our responsibility. So if we do not step up, stop being cowards, stop being low self-esteem, panderers and beggars, and realize that other countries became great because their citizens forced greatness upon them. We must, as Liberians, force greatness upon ourselves. We can do it. We're just as human as everybody else.
Thank you. Mr. Wesley, you got your last word.
That is, what the sanctions seek to do is to expose the lack of accountability, lack of transparency, lack of respect for the rule of law, and our own inability to demonstrate our Liberianness as responsible leaders. If our first branch of government stands up consistent with the letter and spirit of the Constitution, we will make progress. In the ambit of our nascent democracy, if our judiciary moves away from being corrupt and upholds the rule of law, we will not have foreigners telling us what to do better or what is best for our country and our people. If you have an open executive that demonstrates the political will and allow independent graft institutions to work and operate based on the various acts establishing them, we will not be here worried about McGill, Cephas, and Bill Treasury. Because we will have a country where our institutions of state will be functional. Those heading those independent institutions will not be worried about people looking over their shoulders. There will be accountability, there will be transparency, and the so-called 3 separate branches but coordinate apparatuses will work for the good of our country and ensure that they deliver on account of why we established a government in the first place.
Thank you so much to all of you. I appreciate your time so much. I want to also thank our viewers for staying here, even those who are going to watch later. Continue to watch Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. Until then, we want to leave you with our song that says, whether you believe that the country, all the good things started since George Weah came to power, or all the bad things started with George Weah, we are all Liberians. Whether you believe McGill, Bakuba Jr., and Cephas are guilty as charged, we are all Liberians. What is incumbent upon us, though, is to make sure our country becomes, or still is, the glorious land of liberty. Have a good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.